"Once she signs, everything will be ours," my daughter-in-law whispered to the notary, thinking I couldn't hear her. I had already picked up the pen when the back door opened, and my lawyer and an investigator walked into the room. "My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I was 68 years old when my only son decided that loving me and controlling me were the same thing. To explain how I ended up sitting at my own dining table with a notary, a stack of transfer papers, and a hidden recorder under my cardigan, I have to go back 4 months, to a rainy Tuesday afternoon in Portland, Oregon. I was in the kitchen making pear preserves when my son Daniel called. "Mom, are you busy?" I smiled the moment I heard his voice. Daniel had always been able to make me feel needed with just 2 words. He was 36 then, a project manager for a construction company, tall like his father, with the same habit of rubbing his eyebrow when nervous. "I'm never too busy for you," I said, lowering the heat beneath the copper pot. "What happened?" He laughed. "Nothing happened. Something good happened. I want you to meet someone." My heart lifted. Daniel had dated before, but he had never sounded like that. There was a softness in his voice, a cautious excitement. Since my husband Arthur died 3 years earlier, Daniel had become the center of my family life. I knew that one day he would build a family of his own, and I wanted that for him. I truly did. Her name was Vanessa Cole. She was 33, worked in luxury real estate, and had moved from San Diego to Portland 2 years earlier. Daniel described her as ambitious, elegant, organized, and not afraid to say what she thinks. At the time, I took that as a strength. "When can I meet her?" I asked. "This Saturday. I thought we could come to your place for dinner." The moment we hung up, I began planning. I cleaned the guest bathroom, polished the dining table, washed the crystal glasses Arthur and I had received for our 20th anniversary, and drove across town to buy fresh salmon, asparagus, hazelnuts, and the small lemon cakes Daniel had loved since childhood. I knew it was excessive. I knew a normal dinner would have been enough, but this was not just dinner to me. This was the first time I would meet the woman who might become my daughter-in-law, perhaps the mother of my grandchildren. I wanted her to feel welcomed before she ever had a reason to doubt that she belonged. Saturday arrived cold and bright. I wore a blue wool dress and the pearl earrings Arthur had given me on our last Christmas together. At 6:10, a black SUV stopped in front of my house. Daniel stepped out first. Vanessa followed. She was beautiful in a polished, deliberate way. Her dark hair fell in a smooth line over one shoulder. Her camel-colored coat looked more expensive than my entire winter wardrobe. She carried a structured handbag and glanced at the house before she looked at me. "Mom, this is Vanessa," Daniel said. I opened my arms. "It's wonderful to finally meet you." Vanessa leaned forward just enough for her cheek to pass near mine, but she did not hug me. "You too, Eleanor." Not Mom, not Mrs. Whitmore, Eleanor. There was nothing wrong with my name, of course, but the way she said it felt like she was establishing a border. Inside, she walked slowly through the entryway, studying the old oak staircase, the framed photographs, the worn brass handles. "This house is very traditional," she said. "It was built in 1927, I replied proudly. "Arthur and I restored most of it ourselves." Vanessa ran one finger over the edge of a side table, then looked at her fingertip as if checking for dust. Daniel did not notice. At dinner, I tried to ask about her work. "I sell properties to people who know exactly what they want," she said. "That must take patience." "It takes judgment," she corrected. "Most people don't understand value. They become emotionally attached to outdated things." Her eyes moved toward the dining room wallpaper. I gave a small laugh, pretending not to understand. The salmon was moist, the asparagus crisp, the cakes warm. Daniel ate happily. Vanessa moved food around her plate. "Do you not like salmon?" I asked. "It's fine," she said. I usually don't eat anything with this much butter. There's very little butter, she smiled. I'm sure. Later, while Daniel carried dishes into the kitchen, Vanessa stood near the living room window and looked into the backyard. This lot is bigger than I expected, she said. Almost half an acre. In this neighborhood? Yes. She turned toward me, suddenly more interested than she had been all evening. Do you own it outright? The question surprised me. Arthur and I paid off the mortgage years ago. Her expression changed for only a second, a tiny spark behind the eyes. That's smart, she said. Property is security. Then Daniel returned, and the subject disappeared. Over the next 6 weeks, Vanessa became part of our routine, but never part of my heart. She came to Sunday lunches and answered messages beneath the table. She declined every family recipe I offered to teach her. When I showed her the quilt Arthur's mother had sewn, she called it cute in a vintage way. When I mentioned volunteering at the neighborhood library, she asked whether it was good for keeping older people occupied. Daniel always smoothed things over. She's just direct, Mom. She had a difficult week. She's used to a different lifestyle. I wanted to believe him because the alternative was painful. The alternative was that my son saw exactly how she treated me and had decided it was easier to correct my feelings than her behavior. Then they announced their engagement. Daniel proposed at a winery in the Willamette Valley in early October. He showed me photographs before telling me the date. Vanessa wore a cream suit and held her hand toward the camera, so the diamond caught the sunset. We're thinking December, Daniel said. December? That's only 2 months away. Vanessa doesn't like long engagements. Of course she didn't. The wedding planning became a series of small humiliations disguised as efficiency. Vanessa hired a planner without including me. She selected the venue, flowers, menu, seating plan, music, and even Daniel's suit before asking whether I had any thoughts. I offered to host a family brunch the morning after the ceremony. That won't work, she said. People will be tired, and your house is a little far from the hotel. It was 14 minutes away. I offered to make the lemon cakes Daniel loved as a child and place one at each table. We already have a pastry chef, she replied. We need consistency. I offered Arthur's watch for Daniel to wear. Vanessa looked at the old leather strap. It doesn't match the suit. Daniel stared at the floor. Maybe I can wear it at the rehearsal dinner, he said. I nodded, though my throat hurt. 2 weeks before the wedding, I arrived at the venue for a planning meeting Vanessa had reluctantly allowed me to attend. I carried a folder with photographs of Arthur, thinking perhaps one could be placed near the guest book. The coordinator, a cheerful young woman named Paige, greeted me. You must be the groom's mother. Before I could answer, Vanessa called from across the room. Paige, could you ask Eleanor to check whether the side tables need wiping? She notices those things. The room went quiet for half a second. I looked at Daniel. He pretended to read an email. I walked to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and pressed both hands over my mouth so nobody would hear me cry. That evening I took Arthur's watch from its box and held it in my palm. He had worn it every day for 31 years. The crystal was scratched. The leather was soft from use. On the back I had engraved one sentence for our 10th anniversary. Wherever life takes us, we go together. But Arthur was gone, and Daniel was going somewhere I could not follow. The wedding took place on December 17th at a renovated warehouse near the river. Snow had begun falling before dawn, dusting the city white. I wore a deep burgundy dress. My friend June helped with my hair and told me I looked elegant. You're the groom's mother, she said. Today is partly yours too. I wanted to believe her. At the ceremony, an usher led me not to the front row, but to the fourth. Vanessa's parents, step-parents, grandparents, and two of her mother's closest friends occupied the seats ahead of me. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. The usher checked his card. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This is the assigned seat." From the fourth row, I watched my son Mary while staring between strangers' shoulders. During the reception, Vanessa introduced me as Daniel's mom, Eleanor, who lives in the old place in Eastmoreland. The old place. Not the house where Daniel learned to walk. Not the porch where Arthur taught him to tie his shoes. Not the kitchen where we celebrated every birthday. At dinner, I sat beside a retired colleague of Vanessa's father and a couple from Arizona who spoke only to each other. Daniel sat at the head table beneath hanging lights, laughing with his new wife. When speeches began, Vanessa's father spoke for 12 minutes. Her mother spoke for 9. Her sister showed a video. 2 friends performed a song. I had prepared a short toast written on a folded card inside my purse. The master of ceremonies moved toward dessert. June, seated at another table, raised her hand. "Isn't Daniel's mother speaking?" Vanessa's smile tightened. "Of course. Eleanor, you can say a few words." I walked to the microphone. My hands trembled. "I still remember the first night Daniel slept in his own room," I began. "I sat outside his door because I was more afraid of the distance than he was." Vanessa started clapping. At first I thought she had misunderstood. Then others joined, believing I had finished. The microphone was taken from my hand. My toast had lasted 14 seconds. Later, the band played a slow song for parents and children. Vanessa danced with her father. Then Daniel danced with Vanessa's mother. I waited near the dance floor. Daniel passed me twice. At 10:45, I touched his sleeve. "Are we going to dance?" He looked toward Vanessa. "The schedule is tight, Mom. Maybe after this set." The set ended. Then another began. The dance never happened. I left before midnight. Outside, the snow had turned to freezing rain. I sat behind the steering wheel and watched guests laugh beneath the awning. As I started the car, I heard 2 women behind me, Vanessa's friends. They did not see me through the dark window. "She seems harmless," one said. "She is," the other replied. "Vanessa says she's sentimental and easy to manage." They laughed. Easy to manage. I drove home through blurred streetlights, repeating those words. 3 days passed before Daniel called. He did not ask whether I got home safely. He asked whether I had found the envelope he left in the guest room. "What envelope?" "The one with the updated emergency contact forms. I found it on the dresser. Inside were documents requesting information about my doctor, bank, insurance policies, medications, and property." "Why do you need all this?" "It's practical, Mom. Vanessa says families should organize these things before there's a crisis." "I'm not in crisis." "No one said you were." But his tone suggested I had become difficult merely by asking. A week later, Vanessa arrived alone with a bottle of wine and a smile so warm it made me suspicious. "I thought we should start fresh," she said. I let her inside. She admired the house in a way she never had before. She asked about the roof, taxes, renovation costs, and whether the property had ever been appraised. Then, while we drank tea, she leaned closer. "Eleanor, have you considered downsizing?" "No. You're alone in a large house. Maintenance gets harder with age. I have a gardener and a handyman. That costs money." "I can afford it." She paused. "How comfortably?" The question landed between us. I set down my cup. "My finances are private." Her smile remained, but the warmth vanished. "Of course. I only mean Daniel worries." "Then Daniel can ask me himself." He did, 2 days later. He arrived after work carrying takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. For 10 minutes we talked about ordinary things. Then he cleared his throat. "Mom, Vanessa found a condominium development near Lake Oswego. It has security, elevators, and medical services nearby. I have no intention of moving. You haven't even seen it. I don't need to see it. His jaw tightened. You always resist change. That is not true. You still keep Dad's coat in the hallway. The words hit harder than he intended. I looked at Arthur's brown wool coat, still hanging near the door because sometimes seeing it made the house feel less empty. What does your father's coat have to do with selling my home? Daniel rubbed his eyebrow. Nothing. I'm just saying you hold on to things. Memories are not a medical condition. He stood. No one said they were. But again, his tone said I was irrational. After he left, I sat alone at the kitchen table. Rain tapped against the windows. The takeout grew cold. That was the first night I opened the locked drawer in Arthur's desk. I had avoided it since his death, not because I did not know what was inside, but because I knew too well. Arthur had been careful. He kept deeds, insurance papers, tax records, and letters in labeled folders. At the back of the drawer lay a thick envelope marked, "For Eleanor only." Inside was a handwritten letter. My dearest Ellie, if you are reading this, I am no longer there to explain everything myself. I know you trust Daniel. I do too. But love can make good people weak, and weakness can invite the wrong person to make decisions for them. The orchard outside Hood River is fully yours. I never transferred it into the family company because I wanted you to have something nobody could touch, question, or divide. The land, packing facility, farmhouse, water rights, an investment account attached to it belong only to you. Do not reveal this until you are certain it is safe. Most of all, do not let anyone convince you that age has taken away your judgment. You were the wisest person in every room we entered. Remember that. Always yours, Arthur. I read the letter 3 times. The orchard. I knew Arthur had inherited land from his aunt, but I believed he had sold most of it years ago. I did not know he had expanded it. I did not know the property included 180 acres of pears and cherries, a profitable packing contract, 2 rental cottages, and a reserve account worth more than my house. The folder beneath the letter contained appraisals, income statements, and an updated deed naming me as sole owner. The value was not tens of millions, but it was far more than Vanessa imagined I possessed. Enough to live independently for the rest of my life. Enough to hire lawyers, accountants, and caregivers if I ever needed them. Enough to make the person who controlled it powerful. For the first time since the wedding, my fear sharpened into clarity. I told no one except June. June Harper had been my closest friend since we worked together at a community college 39 years earlier. She was blunt, practical, and impossible to intimidate. When I showed her the documents, she took off her glasses and stared at me. Do Daniel and Vanessa know? No. Keep it that way. I feel guilty hiding it from my son. June reached across the table. Eleanor, privacy is not betrayal. What they are doing to you is not concern. They're testing whether you can be pushed. The next morning, June drove me to the office of an elder law attorney named Miriam Blake. Miriam was in her early 60s, with silver hair cut at the jaw, and a voice that never rose because it did not need to. She read Arthur's letter, reviewed the deed, and listened without interrupting as I described Vanessa's questions, Daniel's pressure, the emergency forms, and the condominium. When I finished, Miriam folded her hands. Have you signed anything? No. Have you given them access to your accounts? No. Do they have keys to your house? Daniel does. Change the locks. The instruction startled me. He's my son. And a key is not a symbol of love. It is access. Miriam explained the pattern calmly. First came isolation. Then repeated suggestions that I was overwhelmed. Then pressure to simplify assets. Then documents framed as protection. If resistance continued, the next step could be questioning my mental capacity. "I don't think Daniel would do that," I whispered. Miriam looked at me with compassion, not judgment. "You may be right, but legal protection is built before certainty, not after disaster." Over the next 2 weeks, we changed the locks, created a revocable trust naming an independent fiduciary, moved sensitive papers to a secure box, updated my medical directive, and documented every conversation. Miriam also asked me to keep a daily journal, write dates, exact phrases, and who was present. Facts become powerful when memory is organized. I began recording. January 8th. Vanessa asked whether I forget appointments. January 10th. Daniel said my refusal to move was emotional. January 13th. Vanessa offered to introduce me to a financial advisor who worked with older clients who need structure. January 16th. Daniel requested copies of my bank statements. January 18th. Vanessa called 3 times before noon. The pressure became constant. They invited me to dinner at their new townhouse. It was my first time inside since the wedding. The house was modern, pale, and immaculate. There were no family photographs except wedding pictures. Vanessa served grilled chicken and poured wine. Halfway through dinner, a man named Lucas Grant joined us. Vanessa introduced him as a wealth consultant. "I thought this was family dinner," I said. "It is," Daniel replied. "Lucas is practically family." I had never heard his name. Lucas opened a leather folder. "Eleanor, Vanessa tells me you own a valuable home but may have limited liquidity." I did not authorize Vanessa to discuss my finances. He smiled professionally. She only expressed concern. Then he explained a plan. Sell my house, invest the proceeds through his firm, and place distributions into an account Daniel could help administer. "What happens if I don't want Daniel administering it?" Daniel's face reddened. "Why wouldn't you trust me?" "This is not about trust. It is about whether I asked." Vanessa leaned back. "This defensiveness is exactly what worries us." The word defensiveness made something inside me go cold. I stood. "Thank you for dinner." Daniel followed me to the door. "Mom, you embarrassed us. You invited a stranger to discuss selling my house without telling me." "He's not a stranger. He is to me." Vanessa appeared behind him. "We're trying to prevent a future crisis. You keep creating one." I left. The next day, Daniel sent a long message saying I had become suspicious, isolated, and emotionally unstable since Arthur's death. I forwarded it to Miriam. Her response was immediate. "This language may be laying groundwork. Do not argue by text. Save everything." A week later, I received a call from my doctor's office. "Mrs. Whitmore, your son requested a statement about your cognitive health." My hand tightened around the phone. "He did what?" "He said he was helping update family records. We did not release anything without your consent." I thanked them and hung up. Then I cried. Not because Vanessa had crossed a line. I expected that now, because Daniel had. That evening he came to my house. I did not let him use his old key. He discovered the lock had changed. "Why did you change it?" "The lock was old. You should have given me a new key." "I'm not giving anyone a key right now." His face changed. "Vanessa was right. You're becoming paranoid." The word struck like a slap. "Did you call my doctor?" He looked away. "We need to know whether you're making decisions clearly." "Because I won't sell my house?" "Because you're shutting us out. You entered my private life without permission. I'm your son, and I am your mother, not your dependent." For a moment we stood in silence. Then Daniel said something I will never forget. "If you force this, we may have to protect you legally." There it was, not concern, not persuasion, a threat. I closed the door. My knees nearly gave way before I reached the living room. I called Miriam and repeated his words. She was quiet for several seconds. Eleanor, from now on, assume every interaction may matter in court. The following morning, I completed a full cognitive evaluation with an independent geriatric specialist. I passed every test. My memory, reasoning, judgment, and daily functioning were documented as normal. Miriam smiled when she read the report. Now we wait. Wait for what? For them to reveal the plan. They did not make us wait long. On February 3rd, Vanessa called. Her voice was sweet again. Eleanor, I'm sorry things have become tense. We want peace. So do I. Daniel feels terrible. Could we come Sunday and start over? Just the two of you? A pause. Yes. I knew she was lying. I placed the recorder Miriam had given me inside the pocket of my cardigan. June sat in the kitchen with the back door unlocked. Miriam waited 2 blocks away with an investigator from the county's Vulnerable Adult Protection Unit. We did not know exactly what Vanessa would bring, but we were ready. Sunday afternoon arrived gray and windless. At 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Daniel stood on the porch beside Vanessa, and a man in a navy overcoat carrying a briefcase. This is Nathan Price, Vanessa said. He's a mobile notary, just here to make things easier. I looked at Daniel. You said it would be only you two. It's not a big deal, Mom. I let them in. Nathan placed his briefcase on my dining table. Vanessa took out a blue folder. Daniel remained standing. Sit, I said. They did. Vanessa opened with a rehearsed speech about family, safety, and stress. We hate seeing you burdened, she said. This arrangement will let you enjoy life. What arrangement? She slid the first document toward me. It was a property listing agreement, granting her agency authority to market my house. The second was a limited power of attorney. The third created a joint management account controlled by Daniel and Vanessa. The fourth was an application to a private residential care community outside Salem. I read slowly. You already filled in the application. We toured the place, Daniel said. It's beautiful. You toured where you want me to live without asking whether I want to move. Vanessa sighed. We knew you'd react emotionally. Nathan uncapped a pen. Mrs. Whitmore, all documents are standard. Did you prepare them? I reviewed signatures and identity requirements. Who drafted the power of attorney? He hesitated. A legal service Vanessa uses. Which lawyer? Vanessa interrupted. That isn't important. It is important to me. Daniel sat beside me. Mom, please. We've spent weeks trying to help. I looked at him. Did you tell Nathan that I agreed to sell? His silence answered. Vanessa pushed the pen closer. You can revoke some of these later. I read the clause again. No. This one becomes effective immediately. Nathan cleared his throat. Technically, yes. And the account requires 2 signatures to withdraw money, but either manager can approve investments. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. You're overcomplicating it. I'm reading it. That's why this has become impossible, she snapped. You question every detail. I looked down, allowing my shoulders to sag. The recorder captured everything. What if I sign the house papers but not the power of attorney? I asked. Vanessa and Nathan exchanged a glance. Daniel answered. It all works together. And if I change my mind about the residence? Vanessa reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Once the process begins, changing your mind would create legal and financial problems. That's why you need to trust us. I pulled my hand away. Nathan placed the pen directly before me. We should proceed while everyone is calm. I lifted it. The room became very still. Vanessa stood and walked toward the front door. She turned the deadbolt. What are you doing? I asked. Preventing interruptions, she said. Then she looked at Nathan. Once she signs, she can't change her mind. Daniel whispered, Vanessa. But he did not tell her to unlock the door. I turned to my son. Is that true? You want me to sign documents I cannot undo? He rubbed his eyebrow. Mom, please don't make this harder. That was the moment from the beginning of my story. The pen above the page. My daughter-in-law blocking the exit. My son choosing silence. I set the pen down. Then I reached beneath my cardigan and placed the recorder on the table. The color drained from Vanessa's face. What is that? My memory, I said. The back door opened. June entered first. Miriam followed, carrying a file. Behind her came investigator Samuel Ortiz and a uniformed deputy. Vanessa stepped away from the front door. Daniel stood so quickly his chair fell backward. What's going on? He asked. Miriam's voice was calm. My name is Miriam Blake. I represent Eleanor Whitmore. This meeting is being documented due to suspected coercion, attempted financial exploitation, and possible unlawful restraint. Nathan closed his briefcase. I was told this was a voluntary family transaction. Samuel Ortiz looked toward the locked door. Why was the exit secured? Vanessa laughed, but no sound came out naturally. It was windy. There is no wind, June said. The deputy unlocked the door. Miriam picked up the power of attorney document. Who drafted this? Nathan pointed toward Vanessa. She provided it. Vanessa turned on him. You reviewed it. I reviewed identification requirements. Daniel looked at me. Mom, why are police here? Because you told me you might protect me legally. I decided to protect myself first. His face collapsed. We weren't stealing from you. Then why does this document give your wife control over investments? It was temporary. Why did you contact my doctor? We were worried. Why did you tour a facility without me? You wouldn't listen. Why did Vanessa lock the door? He had no answer. Miriam opened her file. For clarity, Mrs. Whitmore completed an independent cognitive examination 11 days ago. She demonstrates full capacity, sound judgment, and no evidence of impairment. Vanessa's mouth tightened. That doctor saw her once. And you have no medical training, Miriam replied. Samuel photographed the documents. The deputy took Nathan's information. June stood beside me with one hand on my shoulder. Then Vanessa made the mistake that exposed everything. This is ridiculous, she said. We were trying to stabilize assets before she did something stupid with the orchard. Silence. Daniel turned toward her. What orchard? Vanessa froze. I felt my heart beat once, hard. How do you know about the orchard? I asked. She looked toward Nathan, then Daniel, then the window. I don't know what you mean. You just said it. I misspoke. Miriam's expression sharpened. Mrs. Cole, how did you obtain information about property held solely in my client's name? Vanessa grabbed her handbag. This meeting is over. Samuel moved between her and the door. You are free to leave, but we need your contact information and a statement about how you accessed confidential property records. Daniel stared at his wife as if she had become a stranger. Vanessa, what orchard? I went upstairs and returned with a copy of the deed. I placed it on the table. The Cascade View Orchard, I said. 180 acres outside Hood River, packing contracts, water rights, 2 cottages, and an investment reserve. Arthur left it solely to me. Daniel looked stunned. You never told me. No. Vanessa spoke too quickly. We found it while preparing a complete asset plan. We? Miriam asked. Vanessa said nothing. Samuel examined the document. Our preliminary review showed unauthorized inquiries into county property records using a real estate brokerage account. We suspected a connection. Now we have confirmation. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Vanessa, did you search my mother's assets? She turned on him. Of course I did. Someone had to know what we were dealing with. What we were dealing with? I repeated. She looked at me, and for the first time the polished mask disappeared entirely. You live alone in a house you barely use. You sit on property, land, and accounts, while Daniel and I are building a life. Do you know what our mortgage costs? Do you know what opportunities we've delayed because you refused to plan sensibly? There it was. Not care. Entitlement. Daniel whispered her name. She kept going. You would have been comfortable. We found a beautiful residence. You would have had meals, activities, everything. Why should all this wealth remain frozen because you're sentimental? I stood. Because it is mine. The words were quiet, but they changed the room. My house is mine. My land is mine. My decisions are mine. Comfort chosen by someone else is not freedom. A beautiful cage is still a cage. Vanessa looked at Daniel. Say something. He did. Did you marry me because of her property? She stared at him. That is not what this is about. Then answer. I married you because I loved you. But love doesn't mean ignoring reality. Daniel's face twisted. The investigator asked Vanessa to leave the documents. Nathan cooperated quickly, perhaps hoping cooperation would save his license. The deputy escorted them outside. Daniel remained. For several moments he could not look at me. Mom, I didn't know she had found the orchard. But you knew about the house. Yes. You knew about the power of attorney. Yes. You knew she contacted my doctor. He began to cry. Yes. I had imagined that exposing the truth would bring satisfaction. Instead, I felt only grief. The boy I raised was still inside him somewhere. But the man before me had permitted another person to turn me into a project, an asset, a problem to solve. Leave, I said. He looked up. Please. I need you to leave. Can I call you tomorrow? No. Next week? I don't know. He nodded, picked up his coat, and walked out. When the door closed, my legs gave way. June caught me before I reached the floor. For 20 minutes, I sobbed against her shoulder. Not for the money, not for the house. For the loss of the son I thought I knew. The legal consequences unfolded slowly. Nathan surrendered his notary commission, while Vanessa was investigated for unauthorized access to records and attempted financial exploitation. Daniel was not charged, but none of us escaped the emotional consequences. For 2 months, I did not speak to him. I moved temporarily to the Orchard farmhouse outside Hood River. The first morning there, I woke before sunrise and walked between rows of bare pear trees. Frost silvered the branches. Mount Hood stood pale in the distance. Arthur had loved that view. The orchard manager, Rosa Martinez, had worked with him for 20 years. She hugged me when I arrived. He always said you would come when you were ready, she told me. I wish he had told me more. He wanted the land to be your choice, not your burden. The farmhouse was smaller than my Portland home, but it felt open. No one entered without permission. No one measured my rooms or calculated what my memories were worth. I began learning the business Arthur had quietly built. I met workers, reviewed contracts, walked irrigation lines, and sat through financial meetings. At first, everyone spoke slowly to me, assuming I would be overwhelmed. I surprised them. Before retirement, I had managed the budget office at a community college for 26 years. Numbers did not frighten me. Contracts did not confuse me. I had simply allowed grief and motherhood to hide my confidence. Within 6 weeks, I identified an unnecessary distribution fee costing the orchard thousands each season. We renegotiated the contract. Rosa laughed afterward. Mr. Whitmore was right. You are the dangerous one. For the first time in months, I laughed too. Daniel began writing letters. The first was full of explanations. Vanessa had pressured him, He had been afraid of losing her. He believed the residence was safe. He thought helping with finances was responsible. I did not respond. The second letter contained an apology, but still too many reasons. I did not respond. The third was different. Mom, I keep trying to explain because explanations let me avoid the truth. The truth is that I chose comfort over courage. Every time Vanessa disrespected you, I asked you to tolerate it, because confronting her would have cost me something. Then I helped her question your judgment, because admitting you were right would have forced me to see what I had married. I betrayed you before the papers ever reached the table. I do not expect forgiveness. I am writing to say I understand that what I did was not a misunderstanding. It was a series of choices. I am in therapy. I have moved out. I gave investigators access to every message and account. I will accept whatever boundaries you set. I am sorry. Daniel. I read that letter several times. Then I placed it in Arthur's desk. 3 weeks later, I agreed to meet Daniel at a cafe in Hood River. He looked thinner. There were shadows under his eyes. He did not try to hug me. Thank you for coming, he said. I came to listen. He told me he had filed for divorce. Vanessa had admitted she searched public and private records shortly after their engagement. She had believed my house would eventually become Daniel's. When she discovered the orchard, her plans accelerated. She told me selling your house would protect your inheritance from taxes and bad decisions, he said. I wanted to believe her because the alternative made me feel stupid. You are not stupid. He looked relieved, but I continued. You were selfish. There is a difference. He nodded. I know. Did you ever believe I was losing my mind? He stared at his hands. No. The answer hurt more than yes would have. So you knew I was capable? Yes. And you still helped create the appearance that I wasn't? Yes. We sat in silence. Why? I asked. Because if you were capable, then refusing the plan meant you were rejecting us. Vanessa said a loving mother would want to help us build security. She made your boundaries sound like punishment. And you accepted that. I did. I looked through the cafe window at the river. Forgiveness is not the same as restored trust. I understand. You may visit once a month, here, not at my house. No questions about money, property, or inheritance. No keys, no access to medical information. If you pressure me once, the visits stop. Daniel's eyes filled. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Earn the next visit. He did. Month by month, he arrived on time. He asked about my life, not my assets. He volunteered at the orchard during harvest without taking payment. He apologized to June and Rosa. He testified honestly during Vanessa's case, even when it exposed his cowardice. Trust did not return like a light switching on. It returned like spring to the orchard, one bud at a time. A year after the day at the dining table, I made a decision. I sold neither my Portland house nor the orchard. Instead, I converted one of the orchard cottages into a temporary residence for older women, facing family pressure, coercion, or financial abuse. Miriam helped establish a non-profit legal clinic. June organized volunteers. Rosa found local contractors. We named the program Arthur House, not because Arthur saved me, but because his final gift reminded me to save myself. On my 70th birthday, we held dinner beneath strings of lights between the pear trees. June brought a chocolate cake. Rosa's grandchildren played near the barn. Miriam arrived late with legal files still under her arm. Daniel came alone. He handed me a small box. Inside was Arthur's watch with a new leather strap. The scratched crystal remained unchanged. I found a watchmaker who could repair the mechanism without polishing away the marks, he said. I thought the scratches were part of it. I turned the watch over. Wherever life takes us, we go together. For a moment, I could not speak. Daniel looked afraid he had made a mistake. Then I reached across the table and held his hand, not because everything was healed, because healing had finally become honest. Vanessa eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges. She lost her real estate license and was ordered to pay restitution and complete community supervision. Some people asked whether I felt satisfied. I did not. Justice is necessary, but it does not return the nights you spent doubting yourself. It does not erase the moment your own child looked away while someone locked the door. What justice gave me was space to rebuild. At Arthur House, I repeat the same lesson. Protection is not control. Help is not help when refusal is punished, and age does not cancel ownership of your life. Daniel and I are still rebuilding. Trust returns only when he recognizes a boundary before I have to defend it. Most people do not have an orchard waiting in a drawer. They do not have an attorney 2 blocks away, or an investigator ready to enter through the back door. The real turning point was not the deed. It was the moment I understood that being a mother did not require surrendering adulthood, placed the pen on the table, and chose myself. If someone offers help but demands control, pay attention. If they speak about your future without asking what you want, pay attention. If they use your age to make your choices seem less valid, pay attention. If they rush signatures, isolate you, contact doctors without consent, or call resistance confusion, do not wait for a locked door. Tell someone. Document everything. Seek independent advice. Keep copies. And remember that love worthy of the name can survive the word. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I am 70 years old now. I still own my home. I still own the orchard. But more important, I own my decisions. For years, I thought strength meant enduring pain quietly. I was wrong. Real peace began when I spoke. One autumn evening, Daniel and I walked through the orchard after harvest. Empty wooden bins stood beside the rows. The air smelled of leaves and cold soil. He stopped beneath the oldest pear tree. Dad planted this one, didn't he? He grafted it. The roots were already here. Daniel touched the trunk. I think that's what I'm trying to do. What? Grow differently without pretending the old damage never happened. I looked at him. For once, he had chosen the right words. We continued walking. No perfect ending. Just 2 people moving carefully through a place that had survived storms and careless hands. The branches were bare, but alive. My story did not end with a fortune revealed at a table. It began there. The orchard gave me resources, but resistance gave me a future. And the greatest inheritance Arthur left me was not land. It was the reminder that my life still belonged to me. So tell me, what would you have done at that table? Would you have signed to keep the peace? Would you have trusted your son because he was your son? Where does help end and control begin? And what actions should a person take before forgiveness becomes possible? Share your thoughts, because someone reading them may be sitting at their own table right now, holding a pen, wondering whether they are allowed to say no. They are. You are. And sometimes the strongest word in a family is the smallest one. No.